Okay, Rabotai, we are continuing with Hashem Chatzar Yosef. We're in chapter 11, section 3, very beginning of the section. Just a background, because of course, section 1 and 2 is a continuation into section 3, so we have to just quickly say what we're talking about. We're talking about a Gemara Masechet Gittin, which is talking about Onkelos the Ger, the convert who eventually became Jewish, who became one of the most biggest Chachamim ever, and who wrote the Targum Onkelos, which we have in all the Chumashim today. But the story about him is, before he converted, he was thinking about converting, and he called the witch, or he did the witchcraft himself, in order to call upon 3 dead spirits to ask them if it was a good idea to convert to the Jewish people. That is the story. It's found in Masechet Gittin, page 56b, towards the bottom there. A, I should say, A and B. And we already went through the first 2 people that he called. First 2 souls upon which he called to ask the question. The first one was his uncle, Titus, the person who destroyed the second Beit HaMikdash. And of course, Titus told him, don't do it. That was in section 1. Please look at those, reference those videos in order to understand more. Section 2, he called Bil'am, the prophet of the Goyim, the biggest prophet of the Goyim. And Bil'am also told him a very interesting answer, basically telling him no. And we explained Bil'am and his punishment and Gehinam that he's receiving, and all the good, beautiful Chidushim that we explained last time in the previous section. That's section 2. Look at those videos. Now we're in section 3. He's going to call the 3rd person to ask this question. And who is that 3rd person? Maybe you know, maybe you don't. Let's see. We're going to read the Gemara first. In English, page 164. It says like this: Onkelos went and raised none other than Yeshu. Yeshu is an acronym, Yud Shin Vav, Yemach Shemo V'Zichro. That's what it stands for. That his name and his remembrance shall be erased. But basically, who is this talking about? So this is talking about the founder, or the central figure of the Christian religion, who was a Jewish man, of course. And what's the big deal? What? We're going to call him JC. We're going to call him Yeshu. Okay? Onkelos then went and raised Yeshu through necromancy, which is witchcraft. Onkelos said to him, who is important in that world? Yeshu said to him, Israel. So far, all three souls that he called up all gave the same answer to that question. They all said, Am Israel are the most important considerations in Olam Haba. Onkelos then asked him, what if I attach myself to them? What if I become Jewish? Yeshu said to him, seek their welfare, do not seek their misfortune. Anyone who touches them is as if he were touching bebavat aino. That's the Hebrew, and what does that mean in English? The pupil of his eye. Literally, bava means a gate. Bavat aino means the gate of his eye, but here it's an expression to mean the pupil of his eye, the central part of the eye. Who's his eye? Whose eye are we talking about? We'll see. We'll see. Oh. Good guess.
You're getting Hashem very angry.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Onkelos said to him, what is the punishment of that man? Again, he's speaking in 3rd person. He's asking directly to Yeshu, what's his punishment in that world? Yeshu said to him, in boiling hot excrement. Bil'am's punishment was boiling hot bodily fluids of man. Yeshu's punishment is boiling hot excrement, which is a fancy word for, we know what. I'm reading the Gemara over here, okay? You should know, there was a time when the Christians were in charge, medieval times, where they censored a lot of the things in the Gemara about what's written about Yeshu and other Christian ideas. For example, why? Because who controlled the printing press? Who controlled what got printed? The churches. They controlled everything. And it was very limited at that time. And so if you wanted to publish something, it had to be approved by a Christian figurehead. And a lot of times they would censor these negative things. But only later in history were these texts that were censored put back in to certain Gemaras. So this is one of them. Nevertheless, that's the punishment, says the Gemara, that he was enduring. Probably still is, I don't know. As the Master said, anyone who mocks the words of the sages will be judged in boiling hot excrement.
Known for, right?
Who? JC? Yes, we're gonna go through the footnotes here with some background information from other Gemara about what was JC's story, what was his main, where's the Gemara, the main things that Gemara says about him, which we definitely will read in a second. Now, so we see at the end of the day, JC said, you should convert. Do it. Seek their welfare and do not seek their misfortune. Be good with them. Right. This different, very different than what Bilam said, very different than what Titus said. So the Gemara makes a concluding statement based on that. And it says, come and see the difference between the sinners of Israel and the prophets of the nations of the world who worship idolatry. The difference in their answers. Right? Who's the prophets of the nation? That's Bilam. Bilam said, don't do it, and he mocked them. Am Israel. Yeshu said, even though he's a sinner, he's part of Am Israel, he's a Jew. Right? The famous Gemara says, Israel, afal pishachata Israel hu. A Jew, even though he sins, still a Jew. He said yes, he said good things about us. Now let's look at note 1. Look at note 1 for a second. This is JC of Nazarene. That's one of the names. That's the name of the city in which the legend says that he was born and raised. Central figure of Christianity. He was, of course, Jewish, and he was the rebellious student of the Tana, Rabbi Yeshu ben Parachia. He was a student of the Tana, Rabbi Yeshu ben Parachia, who was the Gedol Ador at the time. He was referred to by Chazal as Yeshu, Yud Shin Vav, which is an acronym for Yemach Shemo V'Zichro. May his name and his remembrance be erased. The Gemara tells the story of how he went rogue. Here's the Gemara. I'll read you the story. The Gemara is found in Masechet Sanhedrin 107b. This is just as a sidebar, so we understand our Gemara better. Says the Gemara over there, upon receiving a message in Alexandria from the land of Israel to return to the land of Israel, Yeshu ben Parachia, along with his student, arose and came and happened to arrive at a certain inn, hotel, on the way to Jerusalem. So they're traveling basically. Yeah, they're traveling basically. Yeshu ben Parachia and his students, one of the students there is Yeshu. They stopped at a hotel. They treated him with great honor. Rabbi Yeshu ben Parachia said, how beautiful is this inn, this hotel. Baruch Hashem, we found this place. It's treating us well. His student, Yeshu, said to him, to the rabbi, but the eyes of the innkeeper's wife are oval shaped. Rabbi, did you notice? Her eyes are oval shaped. It's weird. That's the comment he made. Rabbi Yeshu ben Parachia said to him, wicked one, Rasha, do you involve yourself with this inappropriate matter? The appearance of married woman? Why are you looking at her? Why you notice that detail? She's married. He produced 400 shofarot and ostracized him. What that means, look at the Gemara there, I won't get into it. Ba'alman is, he ostracized him. He punished him. Cut off communications with him. The student came, Yeshu, came before Yeshu ben Parachia several times and he said to him, accept my teshuvah. He's trying to make teshuvah, he's trying to apologize. Rabbi Yeshu ben Parachia paid him no mind. One day, Rabbi Yeshu ben Parachia was reciting Shema Yisrael. And the student came before him with the same request for forgiveness. Rabbi Yeshu ben Parachia intended to accept him and signaled to him with his hand to wait until he completes his recitation of Shema. At that time, he said, accepted, I'm going to finally bring him in and accept his teshuvah. But the student interpreted the signal when he said like this. Yeshu interpreted it to mean that he was pushing him away. Get out of here. He went immediately, look what he did, Yeshu. He stood a brick upright. Take a brick, he stood it upright, made it stand pretty much, and he bowed down to it. In spite, just did Avodah Zarah right there. Bowing down to an item with the intent of worshipping that item is the sin of Avodah Zarah. One of the examples the Gemara gives him Masechet Avodah Zarah is if you bow down to a brick, standing upright, that's already Avodah Zarah. He did it right in front of him. Rabbi Yeshua ben Parachia then said to him, repent, make the shuvah for what we just did. It's terrible. The student said to him, this is the teaching that I received from you, Rabbi. What is it? Whoever sins and causes the masses to sin is not given the opportunity to make the shuvah. Why? Because that was already, you have to interpret that statement was made by him after he already got a following. As we know, the legend says,
Please say that again, please. Whoever sins
and causes the masses to sin, Machtiyat Rabim, is not,
10 or more at one time, right?
perhaps, is not given the opportunity to repent, to make the shuvah.
So basically he said, I have this great following now, I made them sin.
Yes, they all followed me, that's it, I'm a goner. There's no hope for me. The master says to him, the master says, another Chacham in the Gemara explaining the story, he says that Yeshu went on to perform sorcery, started doing witchcraft as we know, sorcery. And he incited Jews to engage in idolatry. He got a following to do Avodah Zarah and other things, and led Israel astray. And 2,000, 3,000 years later, here we are today. That is the background story.
Time period wise, one is Onkelos, time frame different.
This is shortly after the destruction of the second temple, and this is during the temple while it was still standing. Rabbi Yeshua ben Parachia, at the end of the second temple, was still standing. So probably like a generation or two before Onkelos. Not too far away. Okay. Good. Now we're going to do Rashi. See what Rashi says about our Gemara. As the master said, Rashi is explaining here, this is referring to what Rav Papa, the son of Rav Acha bar Ada, said in the name of Acha bar Ula in Eruvin 21b. Basically, it's a teaching in Eruvin, Masechet Eruvin 21b. And he derived it from the verse, the following verse. Rashi says there's a pasuk like this that comes in Kohelet. And much lahag, which means mockery, leads to weariness of flesh. That's what it says in Kohelet. Lahag, lamed he gimel, means to mock. So a lot of mockery leads to weariness of flesh, the flesh to disintegrate. Meaning that one who mocks much, a lot, is judged with the weariness that the flesh produces. What does the flesh produce? Excrement. Who mocked? Yeshu mocked his rabbi at that moment by doing Avodah Zarah right at that moment onto the brick, and then everything else that he did afterwards. The verse is written about the words of the sages. This particular verse in Kohelet is written about the words of the sages, as the verse states earlier over there. And beyond these, my son, be cautious. The making of many books has no limit. Meaning that one must be more cautious with the matters of the sages, the oral Torah, than the matters of the written Torah. That's the context of that verse. Look at note number 4. This is in Kohelet 12:12. That's what the verse is. The context of the verse, again, what's the verse? Much mockery leads to weariness of flesh. The context of the verse is the very end of the book of Kohelet, by the way. It says over there, Kohelet, which is a title referring to the author of the book, which is King Shlomo. Shlomo HaMelech wrote this. Kohelet sought to find words of delight and words of truth recorded properly. The words of the wise are given from one shepherd. He's talking about Moshe Rabbeinu, who was the one shepherd who gave the words of the wise, that's the Torah. Beyond these, my son, be cautious. Meaning anything beyond the Torah, other knowledges, other wisdoms, be careful. There's agendas in there. The making of many books has no limit, and much lahag leads to weariness of flesh. Here, the word lahag can be translated as study, to study also. It's a very unusual word, lahag. So it seems, given from one shepherd is referring to the written Torah, which is given by the ultimate shepherd Moshe. Beyond those refers to the oral, So beyond those refers to anything beyond what Moshe actually gave in physical form, which is the Torah, which was the oral Torah. That's beyond the written Torah. Meaning it's not written, it's tradition, which has no limit, even when making many books. That's what the verse The verse uses these terms: no limit, many books, referring to the oral Torah. Why? Because it has no. The oral Torah has no limit about it, even when making many books about it, because of the sheer myriad of detail and nuance the oral Torah discusses and explains the written Torah. The oral Torah is so big. Look at this whole huge library. It's not even a fraction of what the oral Torah is. It cannot contain everything in the book. That's why it was given in oral form. So see Ma'ashar over there who explains more. The Ma'ashar explains the word lahag as mockery. I'm sorry, as study. But Rashi over here, he's explaining the word lahag as mockery. Much mockery leads to weariness flesh. So this word is going to be something that we analyze, lamad he gimel lahag, and see if it reveals any depths, because it has dual meanings here: to mock, to study. Let's see. The next comment of Rashi, he says, the prophets of the nations of the world who worship idolatry. Right, the end of the Gemara said, look at this person, look at the Bilam pretty much. This refers to Bilam, to whom the Shekhinah revealed itself. He had prophecy. Revealed itself to him in his lifetime, and yet he spoke wickedly in death with his evil advice to Onkelos. Even after Bilam died, he still spoke wickedly. That's the Chidush. That's something I have to analyze also. Good. Just 2 short questions, and then we'll do a couple of commentaries and then we'll call it a day. Sha'ar Chatzar, question section on Gemara. Question number 1. What is the meaning of the metaphor that anyone who touches them is as if he were touching the pupil of his eye? That's what Yeshu said when he was asked by Onkelos about converting to Judaism. Yeshu said, you should seek their welfare, be good with them, don't seek their misfortune, and anyone who touches them, Am Yisrael, is touching the pupil of his eye. What does that even mean? Whose eye? Who's it talking about? Next question. He does that. You think he's asleep, but he's sharp. Next question. What is the significance of Yeshu being punished in boiling excrement? Why? Why that particular punishment? Why is it befitting for him to be punished such? Why is mocking of the sages judged so fiercely? We said the reason why he got this punishment is because he mocked the sages, mocked his rabbi. How does the verse in Kohelet 12:12 and the Drasha brought down by Rashi, as we just learned about this word lahag in the verse Kohelet 12:12, how does it connect to our Gemara at all? So those are the questions we want to answer.
Are we going to get into examples of what he did exactly for mocking?
So it seems what they're referring to when he mocked is when he bowed down right away to that brick.
Didn't he have a history of being rebellious and mocking? Wasn't that?
Based on this Gemara, not necessarily. I mean, I'm just going based off of the Gemara. Maybe extra sources, yeah, sure. I mean, later on, the Gemara in the Sanhedrin says that he led Jews astray, so that you got following. But the main incident is that the only reason why he bowed down to that brick is not because he believed in the brick was God. He was a student of Tanakh. He knew Torah. He was just being spiteful, and he wanted to rub it in the face, which is another way of mocking his rabbi.
Do you still get the
sin
of idolatry?
Yeah, to an extent, sure. To an extent.
Bowing down to an idol that you don't believe in?
Yes. Bowing down.
Anything, right?
There's 4 acts that if a person does them to an idol or to anything else that people worship or that he intends to worship, even if he doesn't intend to worship it, but other people worship it, if he does any of those 4 acts, it's an act of idol worshiping, of avodah zarah, that's punishable by stoning. One of them is bowing down. So bowing down, bringing a sacrifice to it, doing a little wine libations, and there was one more, I believe it's oil libations or something like that. These are all ritual-like things.
So bowing down any way, like with the head, with the knees,
Yes.
with the, whatever, any possible way of prostrating.
So there's different types of bows the Gemara talks about. There's full prostration, there's just bowing down at the hips, the knees. I'm not sure which bow particularly would obligate one to be liable in that sin. For sure, the full prostration one, for sure. On the knees, for sure, yeah. Maybe that's the one he did, I'm not sure.
Because this is the one where you have to choose death. Someone forces you to do it.
Yes, you have to say no. You have to not do it. That's the whole point, exactly. Like, if they tell you to bow down the idol, but you don't believe in the idol, you should be able to bow down, right? That's actually, it's a discussion, but at the end of the day, it's a sur. Okay. First commentary, Maharsha, page 166. Says the Maharsha, the expression that anyone who touches them is as if he were touching the people of his eye means the following. Israel is the light of the world. Am Yisrael is the light of the world. And harming them is an extinguishing of that light to a degree. Thus, all other eyes, including those of the harmer, see less clearly. So it seems the Maharsha is interpreting his eye means his own eye. The oppressor itself, who oppresses Am Yisrael, the Jewish people, his own eye will see less clearly. Does that mean physically or conceptually and spiritually? Maybe both. Regarding the drasha that Rashi brought from Eruvin 21b, the Gemara there challenges this drasha since the verse uses lahag, which has a meaning of study in this context. Again, remember we said that. Maharsha interprets the word lahag in that verse in Kohelet to remind ourselves of the verse. The verse over there says, much lahag leads to weariness of flesh. So over there, Maharsha says lahag means study. A lot of study will make you take a toll on your body, pretty much. Also, that's one of the simple interpretations of that verse. So these two, right. So while the more common word for mockery, however, is la'ag with the ayin. Lo'eg means to mock. A common usage of this word is in the laws of cemeteries or laws of dead people. You're not allowed to do mitzvot around a dead body and in a cemetery. The famous Gemara says, you're not allowed to walk in the cemetery with your tzitziot hanging out if they are grinding, or I should say dragging across the floor over the graves. It's asur.
But if it's not dragging?
If it's not dragging, technically it's mutar, but the minhag is to keep it in completely.
So you can't do any mitzvahs in front of the grave?
Yes. Why? Because it's called lo'eg larash. That's what the word I was getting to. Lo'eg. It's called mocking the dead, because they're jealous of you, because they want to be alive and do mitzvot also, because they realize now where they are, how valuable those mitzvot are, much more than you realize it, because they already passed. They're already in that side of the world. They realize how much more, and that they can't get it, and that you could get it, and that you're not taking it as seriously as you should be. So it's a very it's insulting to them. That's why it's a sur. Yeah. Also, there's laws about, like, if let's say the dead person was not taken out to the cemetery yet, he's in the house. He's being held in the house while they're working on the body. How like it wasn't their times. They didn't have organizations like we have. Somebody died in the house. Family comes over. They start cleaning the body. They cut his nails, his hair, and wash him up. So in that time, you can't go sit and open a Gemara next to him and start learning. Even in the same room, you're not allowed to learn.
Say bracha on food?
That's a big discussion in the poskim, whether you're allowed to say bracha on food next. The avelim for sure cannot say the bracha.
Yeah.
But other people, it's a machloket in the poskim, how far away you have to be from him. Is it just turn away from him, or is it a different room altogether? It's a machloket in the poskim. Bottom line is, it's all lo'eg larash, under this issue of mocking. So now the Maharsha says the word for mocking is lo'eg, la'ag, lamed ayin gimel, which is closely related to the lamed hey gimel that we're talking about in the verse in Kohelet. The only difference is the hey over there versus the ayin over here. These two words have a difference in spelling one letter, like I just said, hey versus ayin. Nevertheless, it seems the rationale behind the drasha. So the Maharsha's question is, why is the verse says lahag, lamed hey gimel, but Rashi is interpreting it to mean la'ag, mockery. So Maharsha says, it seems the rationale behind the drasha is that the letters hey and ayin come from the same family of letters, and can therefore be interchanged for the purposes of making drashot. So I explained this before. Look at note number 1. I refer you to another place in the book where we talked about phonetic families in the Aleph Bet. Even though the Gemara there in Eruvin challenges the drasha, it is still true in essence. Maharam Shiv says that's a side point. But the point is this, that we have families of letters, and the families are based on how they are phonetically pronounced. which anatomical part of the mouth is used to pronounce them. This is from Sefer Yetzirah, famous Kabbalistic book, legendarily written by Abraham Avinu himself. The book of formation, Sefer Yetzirah. So over there it talks about this particular thing. You have these families of letters. So you have guttural letters. You have plosive letters that go from the lips, right? They explode. P is one of them. Pei. F. Fe. So the example here is talking about Hey and Ayin. Hey and Ayin come from the throat. The guttural letters. I believe it's called guttural. So Hey, Ayin, Aleph, and Hit are of that family. Okay? So we see a lot of times in the Gemara, well, they'll take a letter and interchange it for another letter in its family in order to create a new word to teach you a deeper meaning of that verse. So that's what's happening here. They would substitute the Hey for an Ayin, and that's why they're trying to mean mock. So much mockery leads to weariness of flesh, and that's how Rashi took that verse and he applied it to Yeshu, because he mocked his rabbi, and he was judged and punished in the weariness of flesh, meaning what the flesh produces to the waist. And what's that? Excrement. That's how you explained it. It seems the message of the verse Kohelet 12:12 is the following, says the Maharsha. One who disgraces the words of the Chachamim is disgraced by receiving judgment of boiling hot excrement, like we just said. The meaning of the verse's word usage of much mockery is thus. Why does it say much mockery? The sages write many books detailing many offenses, right? The verse also talked about many books over there. They write many books detailing many fences around the Torah that they enact. Right? A lot of the Rabbanan decrees are fences around Torah rules that they don't want you to even come close to breaking. So those who mock the sages for this, they make too many fences, they make too many rules. Another Rabbanan rule. Anytime you tell one of the older generation that this is the law, this is halakha, oh, you made up another law halakha. You made up another thing. Back where we came from, the old country, never heard of such a thing. Right? Every year you learn something new. You tell them, you made up another thing, as if I'm creating the religion as I'm going along. That's what they believe, and people do that. They mock it. So people who do that, those who mock the sages for this, claiming that they add too many rules to Torah observance, is judged with weariness of flesh. What's weariness of flesh? As the verse says, the waste of the body, which is the boiling hot excrement. Beseder. Iyun Yaakov. Next one, just a short one. He explains the following. He says, once Yeshu told Onkelos to seek the Jews' welfare, he told them he should become Jewish, seek their welfare. What is the purpose in adding the detail that anyone who touches them is as if he were touching the pupil of his eye? That was extra. What did Onkelos ask the spirit of Yeshu? Should I become Jewish? He told them, seek their welfare, don't seek their punishment. Okay, end of quote. That's where I should have stopped. No, he told them one more thing. Anyone who touches the Jews is like he's touching the pupil of his eye. Why is he telling them that? Says Yaakov. Rather, he told Onkelos this point in order to openly reject what the previous advisors, the previous souls that Onkelos called upon to ask the same question in section 1 and 2 of this chapter. Look over there. Who was that? Titus and Bilam had recommended him. Which was what? They said to harm Israel. So he said that in order to counteract what they said. He says, don't listen to them. Bilam himself was a victim of this, since when he tried to curse the nation, he was punished with blindness in one eye. Right? Bilam famously was blind in one eye. The verses say it straight out. Even Bilam says it about himself. It's interesting when he starts giving the barachot over there in the Parashat Balak. He first introduces himself in each beracha. Says Bilam, Shitum Ma'ayin. Shitum Ma'ayin means closed one eye. One eye was closed. And the other eye was what he used to do, or was it the closed one, the broken one? Well, he had one functioning eye and one closed eye that was not functioning, couldn't see, but he used that one for witchcraft. For sorcery, he used to curse people with that eye. So he tried it. He tried to curse the Jewish people like that, and instead, it didn't work. So he remained blind. So that's the point that Yaakov is pointing to. That Yeshu was saying, that if you try to curse them, it's like you're touching the pupil of your own eye, meaning you're damaging your own eyesight. So So far we have the Yun Yaakov and the Marasha both saying that that it's referring to your own eye. I mean the oppressor's own eye. The oppressor's own eye. Okay. Beseder. We're up to the Maharal, which is a little bit a long piece. I think we'll stop here, guys. 10:30. B'ezrat Hashem, next week we're going to continue Maharal, Ben Yehuda, and then we'll start a little bit of the Chatzar Yosef. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.